Well, it was three in a row for Oscar Piastri as he waltzes his way to a win in Miami. Welcome to the Grid Talk podcast. My name is Louis Edwards, and today we are going to be discussing the review of the Miami Grand Prix. Today, I just have a singular guest joining me today, which is fellow Grid Talk co-host and Monkey Seat host, Tom Horrox.
Hello. I don't know why nobody wants to be on this show. It's only 11:30. Come on.
I know it's only 7:30 in the morning for me. Uh, so, as I kind of mentioned in the beginning, Tom, three in a row for Oscar Piastri in terms of Grand Prix wins, that is. And the first, well, actually, yeah, I think I first should thank Jawad for this stat. The first McLaren driver to to get a hat trick of wins in a single season since Senna in 1991. I mean, he is having an absolute blazing season. He started off a little rough, but he is now all guns blazing and very much in control of this championship.
Well, I would say he is in control of the championship at the moment because he's the driver in form. But I wouldn't, I mean, given that we're only a quarter of the way through the season, and to my calculations, he seems to be, apart from obviously the spin in Melbourne where he was very unlucky, he has had the rub of the green on a few things as well. But I just think that at the moment, for me, Lando seems to be the slightly quicker driver on balance, but just isn't quite putting it together. Oscar is the one that's far more consistent, and consistency is going to pay dividends. But I think if Lando gets his act together, we really do have a strong championship because what is that now? 17 points, I think it is. That's nothing, or no, it's less than that. It's 16 points, isn't it? Because Lando outscored in the sprint. So that's nothing. Two 1-2 finishes, and then we're back pretty much square again. So I don't think he's running away with the championship. It's he's really impressing me this season. He's definitely closed the gap onto Lando there. There's virtually nothing to pick between them now. So it's great to see. I do wish it was slightly closer. I think the 30-second gap today is a little bit yeah, it was great seeing them come through the field, or seeing Lando come through the field, and then Oscar chasing after Max at the start. But I just kind of I mean, we've been waiting for them all to converge, and we kind of got it last year, but not quite. And then this year, it's kind of gone back to 2023 levels a little bit. But I mean, we've got a few more races to go before this TD comes in Spain, so that will hopefully bring things a little bit closer together, and we can have a barnstorming finish to the season. But no, it is phenomenal. I had the stat down for because the had the three wins over the end, the famous Jerez 97 race, which Hakkinen won, and then you had Melbourne and Brazil in 98, which were the three in a row, which is the last time a McLaren driver won three in a row. But three in a season, yeah, absolutely goes way back to 1991. I hadn't even considered that. So yeah, fantastic stat, Jared.
Yeah, long before I was born. Um, but let's quickly talk about Lando Norris. Good start off the line, but when you're jostling with Max Verstappen in the first couple of corners, you do have to kind of have your head screwed on a little bit tighter than usual. And going for a move around the outside of turn two isn't always the wisest thing when you've got someone who is more than willing to put their elbows out. You know, Lando last season had this knack of losing positions off the line, and this season it feels like losing positions after turn one because of ambitious moves, I would say. Um, if he just tucked in behind Max, do you reckon he would have won today's race?
No, because he would have been swamped by the people behind him. He had to. It was an open door. He had to go through it. But my God, does he treat Max like the hind legs of a donkey now? And with good reason. But to be honest, like that was fair. I mean, I'm sure we'll get on to Max, but that was fair enough from Max. You know, like that was, if you look at it, he's had a snap of oversteer going into turn two, and then he's kind of just slid out towards Lando. And Lando from where Lando is, from initially when I first saw it, I thought, you know what, that's hard racing. That's a little bit on the dirty side from Verstappen, but it's hard. It's lap one. You've got to defend your position. He knows that's likely his only chance to win the race, to keep the lead for as long as possible. And I thought, well, that's kind of fair, but a little bit hard. But then I saw the Lando Norris on board, and then I was like, well, it looks like, I know this isn't what happened, but it looks like Verstappen is forcing him out with absolutely no consideration whatsoever for trying to allow him space. And then he's thinking he's going to put me into the wall. So he backs out of it for self preservation reasons. I think if you don't go for that gap, and I'm not going to sound like one of those people, if you don't give forget me, no, I'm not saying that. That kind of position, you're it's turn one. You've got your axle very slightly ahead going into the goal. Yes, you're on the outside, but you are completely alongside. It looks like you're getting space. You've got a long wide corner, but then the other guy pushes you out, and you've got to go for it. If you don't, then you've got these other guys right behind you, Antonelli and Piastri. They're right there. They're going to swamp him. If he backs out of that earlier and just tucks in behind, he has no idea what the race pace is like at that Red Bull at that point. So I just don't think it was. If he's not gone for it, he's going to get criticised anyway, isn't he? He's going to be like, "Oh, Piastri would have got it. Look at Monza. Piastri would have gone for that, absolutely." And so I think he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for this one, which is why initially didn't get it in the end for me. Initially, I thought maybe driver of the day because that wasn't his fault, and his comeback was phenomenal. He was probably the quicker McLaren driver, shading it today over the course of the race and over the weekend, to be honest. So I don't think he's got anything to worry about for the championship. I'm not saying he's won it by any stretch. He's got a really hard task to try and overcome Oscar Piastri, but he's got the pace. And at the moment, he's got the fastest car. So all he's got to do is maximize more often than Piastri. And at the end of the year, he will be world champion. So, but that's the hard bit. He's got to maximize more often than Oscar Piastri. And that's going to be hard.
Yeah, it's a Piastri's a cool, collected driver. It's very it's a very um I wouldn't say bizarre thing to see in Formula One these days, but for someone who is just more than happy to just go about his business and just get on with it, Piastri does do a remarkable job in that aspect. But yeah, it feels like for Norris, he has everything he needs. It's just a case of just put it together. Um, we'll round off the podium with George Russell, who was kind of sitting pretty in like fifth for most of the race, stuck behind his teammate Kimi Antonelli, and then Max, who was in the podium positions after both McLarens eventually made it past. Definitely benefited from the virtual safety car. Could have had a nicer gap to Verstappen had the pit stop gone a little bit more smoothly. But it's a case of Russell just doing Russell things and getting a podium. The story of his season.
Yeah, he's swapped from Mr. Saturday to Mr. Sunday now, hasn't he? Definitely, he's leading that team really well. His teammate has very much kind of declared his arrival this weekend without really bearing much fruit. Looking at how things panned out, but after his performances in the qualifying sessions, you think, wow, and then in the race, you're like, oh, 3 laps in, and Russell's right there with him. So it goes to show just how strong he is in races now, and his experience is really coming through. And I had a few technical issues during this race, as I'm sure I'll come back to later on. And so I missed about across 3 different spells of technology breakdown. I ended up missing about 20 minutes of this race, and I tried to catch up on it. But I seem to remember at one point him making a mistake as it to allow maybe Piastri through, but I think that was as my problem started. So I missed that. But that for me was the only thing that blotted his copybook. I think there was one point where he let someone through by outbraking himself going deep somewhere. But yeah, absolutely benefited from the safety car. He probably was nailed on P4, but yeah, with the virtual safety car, that's put him back up to P3, and then he's able to hold on from there. I think he probably would have chased Max down. I don't think he would have got ahead, but he certainly would have made a race of it. But yeah, like you say, it's just Russell doing Russell things. He's having a great season. Mercedes are in that championship fight, not with McLaren. I don't think there's too much of a gap there, but he's there. I mean, what Mercedes are 141 points to Red Bull's 105. But they're still 105 points behind McLaren. So that's going to be a hard ask. But again, still 3/4 of the season to go, so we never know what's going to happen after this TD comes in. So yeah, they're looking good with their one driver. Antonelli will come good, as he's shown this year that he's definitely got a very high ceiling that he's not going to reach for a very long time. So I think Mercedes are going to be very happy with their decisions and their direction at the moment. Unhappy that they're not fastest, but happy with where they're going.
Yeah, I mean, I just did want to quickly mention Kimi Antonelli. I mean, obviously we don't cover the sprint races anymore, so he wouldn't have got his flowers yesterday for getting sprint pole. I think it was a good job that he got that. Then what happened at turn one. He was a bit I don't know quite what he was thinking, just turning in on Oscar in turn one like that. But and then his race was ultimately ruined by the Red Bull unsafe release. And today it was just kind of boxed early, tried to, try and get some sort of undercut, and then the virtual safety car kind of screwed him, and then he lost out to Albon in the end. But I just did want to mention Kimi. So yeah, let's talk about Max. So P4 in the end, you know, started on pole, held it for as long as he possibly could in the lead of the race. Eventually, he was always going to get overtaken by the McLarens. It was a kind of inevitability. The race pace of the McLarens was really good. Had a good old scrap with Lando, as we're starting to get a little bit more familiar with, and yeah, then lost out to Russell in the VSC. I mean, how would you rate Verstappen's performance today? It wasn't anything blinding, but it was as solid as you could possibly get, probably.
I think he had a solid race, but I'm going to caveat my opinions here with just to tell you a little story of how my race panned out. Oscar Piastri gets to 8 tenths of a second behind Max Verstappen. I get a big fuzzy screen on my TV, and then lots of swearing and lots of different devices connecting to different services, and then eventually it reconnects, and Oscar Piastri is 9 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. So I've kind of caught up with little bits of it after the race. I've seen that basically Max was his usual staunch defender, and potentially Oscar losing out quite a lot on time initially, but then Lando losing more time, and you do think that maybe if the start had gone slightly differently, then yeah, it could have been it could have been a dominant win for Lando, and all of a sudden this whole situation is changing. But he was never going to keep those McLarens behind him, so you think it's Max doing Max things again, just trying as hard as possible to keep in these positions, desperate for a podium. But in the end, his aggressive defense has probably lost him a podium. Let's be honest, because if he hadn't have lost so much time scrapping with the McLarens, who realistically were always going to pass him, when the VSC comes out and George Russell makes his pit stop and Mercedes blunder it, Max Verstappen comes out ahead of George Russell, probably 3 or 4 seconds up the road, and we don't really have this conversation. So you could maybe say that he did this a lot last year. I found that he was so kind of spooked by this potential Lando Norris championship fight that never really existed, that he would do anything to disrupt Lando Norris's races and McLaren's races. And as a result, that's what brought Ferrari back into the championship fight. He would sacrifice his race just to stop someone else's. And that's what he was doing today to a slightly lesser extent, which is probably the last thing I think Max Verstappen needs to add to his arsenal. A bit more big picture stuff and a bit more kind of gentlemanly conduct in certain situations, because he's at war when he's on the racetrack, which is what makes him so great. He's at 99% all of the time. And then when he gets angry, he gets that 100% and he's just unbeatable. Most other drivers are that 90-95%, and then occasionally you'll see them reaching peaks that he is at all the time, which is a phenomenal trait. But I just feel like on occasion he doesn't think big picture. He doesn't think, well, what is this going to mean for the championship, and really, is what I'm doing fair as well? It seems a little bit, I don't know. I don't want to sound like sour grapes, because it's not, but I just feel sometimes he just goes a little far beyond that line still. But you cannot deny that today was probably a 99% race, not a 100% race, but a little more. He's probably lost a couple of points he could have gained, but I guarantee he'll gain 50 points this year that he would never have any chance of earning in other scenarios. So yeah, not his absolute best race, but still strong performance.
Well, he's a dad now. Maybe he'll gain that fatherly perspective on life. Tom, I assume you may have got that wisdom now.
I too have lost 0.2 of a second a lap since I've had my child. So,
yeah, there were a few incidents during the battle, turn one, Lando went for a move on the outside, and Max pushed him a bit wide. Lando absolutely sent it at turn 11, and then eventually gave the position back in the hairpin toward the end, and then
Yeah,
Lando eventually
I've seen
made it
that's the right
past.
thing to do. He was off the track when he passed. I saw that.
Yeah, it was, and ultimately that cost them heaps of time. And by the time that Lando got past, yeah, he was 9 seconds behind Oscar. Um, okay, so now I want to move on um, to Williams, and honestly, for me, incredibly impressed with what Alex Albon did today, finishing ahead of both Ferraris, which honestly it's not that much of an achievement anymore, it would seem. And also Kimi Antonelli, but definitely not taking anything away from Alex's weekend. He has been rock solid.
Yes, yeah, strong weekend all around from Alex Albon. Sainz again, still getting used to that car, but showing good pace as well. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I've been really trying to not do that on on microphone, so hopefully I managed to catch that mute before I went into my coughing fit. Yeah, no, he's well, Williams just as a whole really impressed me this weekend. They were quicker than the Ferraris and well, certainly Antonelli, and they look quicker than both Mercedes for long periods of the race. And I was thinking, do you know what? This could be an Alex Albon podium. There were times I was thinking he is the pace that they're showing. He is going to break through. He's going to head after Max Verstappen. They're going to finish ahead of Russell and Antonelli, and it was going to be a McLaren, Williams, probably Williams, Ferrari, Williams, Mercedes, or something like that. But yeah, it's I think they just lack that final little bit of pace they still need to really come in, and it looks good for next year, considering that they've already shown that they are not. I mean, the stuff that's in the pipeline, but they're not developing anything for this year's car now. The stuff that will come through onto the car, but they are full beans for 2026. And it's positive with the two drivers they've got and with the amount of development they're putting behind it. The only question mark is, are they doing too well? Because they're currently sitting P5 in the championship, which is great. But you look at Sauber, from what I understand, Sauber have got a lot of updates that are just waiting to go on the car, which they're just conveniently going to put on after Spain, because then the car will suddenly get a lot better, and the wind tunnel testing allowance is reset, ready for next season. So if they get a P10 finish this year, they're going to have a ton of wind tunnel time. Now I know it's anti-competitive, and no team is going to purposely tank, but if they're going to be ninth or 10th, and possibly 10th anyway, why not just tank it a little bit and then make sure you get that wind tunnel time. But Williams, though, I P5 is going to be an incredible achievement if they manage to get that. I think probably their biggest rival, I always said, would be Alpine. I still think on pace it is, but it's just not happening for them. And Williams are the same week after week of picking up the points. It's a big reversal from last year, and it's good to see. So I think they are now the pole threat for that fifth place in the championship. It's looking good for them, and it's looking good for next year. It looks like Carlos Sainz, given the way Ferrari are going, may have played a bit of a blinder here. I'm sure Ferrari will be back, but yeah, it's looking good for them, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that battle between those two drivers develops over the season when the car, certainly next season when the car is a bit more competitive.
It was a very solid job. And then a quick thing on Sainz. Sainz was having a fairly decent race. Was getting caught up towards the end of that Ferrari drama that we'll touch on in a bit later. But certainly an ambitious move made at the end. How do you make it? Sainz came on the radio, said he moved under braking. Is that
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, he moved to take the corner. He should have come from that far back. It was a bit desperate. If that wasn't the last lap, he's not making that attempt. So no, I think that's him trying to play the ref there. So I don't think Lewis has got anything to worry about for a penalty there. It was to be honest, it was strong. It was a strong awareness from Lewis to keep that from those two ending up or him being spun round and Sainz losing a front wing. So no, I think there's nothing in that. Fair enough, you got to give it a go, but yeah, I don't think he'll be complaining to the stewards after the race. Put it that way.
Well, he will be visiting the stewards after the race, will Carlos Sainz, as he has been summoned for failing to slow for yellow flags. I mean, we personally don't think it's going to have really that much of an effect, even if he gets a penalty, considering he finished 14 seconds ahead of Yuki Tsunoda after Tsunoda's penalty. So a 5 or 10 second penalty at most is probably going to be applied, and he'll still keep his P9. He'll just finish 10 seconds behind Lewis rather than the half second that he did. So if you enjoyed the podcast, we'd love it if you could take 5 to leave a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And also, if you are live right now on YouTube and you are not subscribed, please make sure to help us out with a like and dive bomb that subscribe button, like Carlos Sainz. So let's talk about Ferrari. So Lewis Hamilton made this mega move to Ferrari. He has not stopped complaining about his engineers since. And today we're really starting to get some blinders in the jab department from Lewis. When he was told not to overtake Charles, he was like, "Oh man, you guys." And then when Ferrari did their "we are checking," he was getting very irate, saying, "Why don't you just go on? Are you having a tea break as well?" Like, he is not a happy bunny, is he, Tom?
No, and I don't think any of Team LH are particularly happy at the moment. It just seems that the way things have panned out, like, it started off okay, and he's fighting with Leclerc in Australia. Leclerc gets the better of him in the end, and you think, okay, they're just going to bounce around like that. China comes along and he wins the sprint race, and it's like, yeah, this is all going well, and really since that sprint race, we go into China in the race, and Leclerc's there with a broken front wing, and you're like, well, this is going to end badly for Leclerc. Hamilton's going to take, leading the championship over him, and that's going to be a big moment for them. But Leclerc was quicker than them with a broken front wing, and I know that may have done something to the airflow. I know the end plates on these cars, because they're much more standardized under this regulation set, if anything, probably losing an end plate can actually help your performance in some situations. So I don't really buy too much into that, but it's just not. I don't know what's going on, but it's just not really working for him. And I don't blame Ferrari, because they want it to work. Like, they were doing everything they can to make this work, because they spent a lot of money on him, and it needs to work for them to for this investment to show off. And they had the Ferrari CEO was in the garage today, and seeing that is not going to put a smile on his face at all. It's a bit worrying. I don't know if Lewis is unhappy with his engineer and is looking to maybe swap him out for somebody else or whatever, but it's certainly not gelling at the moment. And I don't know what the answer is, because he seems to just be going missing. He'll have spells in races where he's fine, and then it will just disappear, and then all of a sudden he'll be on the back foot again. And when he signed for Ferrari initially, I remember saying on the podcast at the time, I think year one it's going to be all about Leclerc, and then year two maybe it will come good for him. I remember people thinking, I think you're underestimating how good Lewis Hamilton is there. But I think people are underestimating how good Charles Leclerc is. He's completely entrenched in that team. He knows everything about that team. And Lewis Hamilton is very much the outsider coming in. He's never driven a Ferrari before. He's never driven a Ferrari engine before. He's always been in that Mercedes engine. And it's a complete change of everything that he's ever known in Formula One. He's always been in the UK. He's always been around his people that he's put together. I know he's got Angela Cullen there at Ferrari, but it's trying to create something that's already gone a long time ago. And instead of, I don't know, I'm not in the Ferrari fold, obviously, so I have no idea how they work, but something isn't gelling there, and something needs to change because it's a really sad situation to be in. And I'm not saying that Lewis Hamilton should be destroying Charles Leclerc because he's clearly a phenomenal driver, but he needs to get on top of these issues this season, and he needs to have a complete reset for next season, and needs to hope that these regulations, the new regulations, will favour his driving style more than Leclerc, and that he can adapt quicker. But to be honest, given how well he's adapted to the Ferrari situation, I'm not convinced that he's got it in him to do another big regulation switch at the age that he's at and still keep that absolute peak level. I mean, it's so close. You're talking tenths of a second here, but the gap to his teammate at times is the same level that we were crucifying Sergio Perez for the last 2 years. And Liam Lawson got sacked for less of a deficit, so he does need to fix it. I mean, I say less of a deficit. It's kind of in race trim, but because that's not really fair given where Lawson was qualifying. So I'll just caveat that it needs something needs to change, and it needs to get fixed pretty soon. So I think Lewis needs to get the right people around him and find out what's going on, because this is just not working, and it's sad to see.
I mean, Lewis should probably be quite grateful for the points that he did get today. He was kind of like waltzing around that kind of P11 spot from a lot of the race until the pit stops. Ferrari were definitely one of the teams that greatly benefited from that virtual safety car and ended up putting them in the position that they were. But yeah, it's a very odd situation. I imagine a lot of Lewis fans would be like, "Oh, just sack this strategy. Let's bring in some better strategists." But at the end of the day, you just got to work with the tools that you've got. And Ferrari haven't got a great car at the moment, especially compared to the other front runners. And Lewis did have his moment. He had the sprint race win in China. We thought everything was going to go well, but it's sometimes Formula One is. It's like that. Your luck's with you one day, and then you're down on the luck for the rest of your season. But yeah, Charles P7. Eventually, they were chasing down Kimi Antonelli, which neither of them got in the end. Do you think it was too late to cause all that swapping, or was it just never going to happen?
It could have happened, and I think it potentially would have happened, but why are they not discussing before the race? You've clearly got an offset strategy there. I didn't have any tyre data really, so I wasn't sure exactly how things started off. But from the looks of it, I think did Lewis start on the hards and then move to the mediums, and then the other way around for Leclerc? At what point did they not think in a race that's got thunderstorms forecast as well? Like, if you've got two drivers on different strategies and they're likely to come across each other at some point in the race, why wouldn't you say, if you two come across each other in the race, I mean, you shouldn't even need to say it before the race. It should just be entrenched in the normal procedures. This is the standard operating procedure. If you're on converging strategies, you don't get in each other's way. Lewis did it in China. Yeah, he was the one telling them, let me get out of Leclerc's way because I'm slowing him up. And then when it came to this time today, they're just like, oh, well, hang on, we'll let you know. Why are you talking about it now? When Hamilton was flying up to the back of Leclerc, why were you not discussing then? Oh, we didn't talk about this before the race. Perhaps we should have done. Let's talk about it now. If he gets up to what we're going to do, we'll get him past because he's going after Antonelli. And yeah, so in the end, Hamilton's probably spanked his tyres behind Charles Leclerc, lost the best of them. That's why his pace went through the floor after that point, too long behind Leclerc, then not able to get after Antonelli. Looking at the way things panned out, I suspect what probably would have happened is if they'd have just waved Lewis by without losing any time, he'd have got after Antonelli, had a good old battle with Antonelli. He might have got past him, he might not, before those tyres went off. He probably would have got behind Antonelli, overheated his tyres, and then got stuck there. And then Leclerc is the one that's on the back of Hamilton. Then what are they going to do? Hamilton will then be, well, let's give Leclerc a go. So then he then gets into a position, allows Leclerc to go through, and then they have a little squabble. And then we may end up with a situation like we had earlier in the race where Hamilton goes flying past a car that Leclerc is fighting with. And there's a strong possibility both Ferraris get past Antonelli if they're just a little bit more nimble on their feet. And it surprises me because they've been better and they have taken a big step back this weekend. And it's a real shame. I don't know if it's because they haven't got Carlos Sainz in their strategy meetings anymore, because he was the one calling the strategy from the cockpit a lot of the time. So um, it's very disappointing to see it go back to how it was before. And I'm sure Lewis has very much got buyer's envy on this contract because it's not working out at the moment. And Leclerc, I'm sure, will be very frustrated with yet another year of his career wasted. This guy is phenomenal. He could be the generational talent that people are talking about, Piastri, and people are talking about Verstappen. He is up there with those people. And yet he's never even competed for a world championship. He's briefly led a world championship in 2022, and that's it. That's all, because he's just never had the equipment consistently, and he needs to. And Ferrari need to sort it out because they're wasting his career. He could pass Sterling Moss as the greatest driver to never win a world championship. I think even if his career ended now, he would probably still pass Sterling Moss for that honor, in my opinion, because he's a phenomenal talent. He's raced for so many years, raced so many races now, and he's just not had that opportunity. And he's always been in cars that can win or push for podiums, but he's just not been able to get the results. So it's just a real shame for him.
Yeah, it's all yeah, it's one of those. It's life as a Ferrari driver. It's just like constant disappointment, and every year, you think it's going to happen, but there's always one thing that kind of drags them back down. So let's have a look outside the points now. We've covered the top 10 pretty much. I mean, shout out to Yuki, got P10, also got a penalty. But let's have a look at Aston Martin. So Fernando Alonso um, still has not scored a point this season, and he finished 15th, ahead of his teammate Lance Stroll. However, the good old Canadian scored 4 points in the sprint race, which has now put Fernando even further behind. And it all mostly came down to a stupid little spin that he had while chasing down the pack. It's uncharacteristic of Fernando Alonso. I think it's the best way to describe this season. And when is that point going to come? Because let's face it, the top five teams are all much more competitive than Aston Martin. As you mentioned earlier, Sauber are waiting for these upgrades to come after Spain. Haas, in terms of general pace, faster. It's going to take a lot for Fernando to get that point, and spinning is not going to help him.
Yeah, it's there's not a lot of points going to be available for the Aston Martin team. You say it's Stroll that scored all the points at the moment, but it's only what 10 points is it or 14?
It's
I've
14
lost
now.
track of where it was now. 14 points, yeah. So it's 14 points, which it's going to be difficult for him to score that, especially with Aston Martin looking at next season. But I'd say this season has been very uncharacteristic of Fernando Alonso. There comes a point, are you? I know people have been saying this for 10 years, but have we now reached that tipping point with Fernando Alonso? Is Lance Stroll now a better driver than Fernando Alonso because of just, biology? You look at his season so far, he's had two DNFs in the first two races. Race 3, he finished 57 seconds off the lead. Race 4, 60 seconds off the lead. Race 5, 75 seconds off the lead. So it's just getting worse and worse. And it's just hard to see. I don't genuinely think his spin would have changed much. And then he's crashing on his own. In that was, I believe, did he crash on his own in the sprint race? Or was he spun round? I can't remember now.
No, he was punted by Lawson.
Yes, he was punted. I beg your pardon. Yes, he was punted by Lawson. So yeah, that wasn't his fault. But yeah, it just seems to be too many excuses now. And I don't know if he's just disengaged with this year's car because, the guy's going to be 44 when he come back from the summer break. So like I think maybe he's just fed up of this car and he's just putting all his eggs in the 2026 basket and just hoping that that's a car that could win races. But I just don't see Aston Martin they might make a 2023 style jump where they, or was it 2023 jump where they end up looking like they can get podiums, but I don't think it's going to be this magical, silver bullet that they need. And once again, it's just been the wrong move for him. He's gained a couple more podiums in his career by going to Aston Martin, but if he'd have stayed put at McLaren, then look how things would have turned around eventually. It would have taken a few more years, but it would have turned around. He might have got a win or two at Alpine, potentially not this year certainly, but I think he's once again he's made these moves, and it looked like he made the right move when he jumped to Aston Martin, but I'm not convinced long term it was, because he may have been the answer to that Mercedes quandary they had. He might have been the man that Red Bull finally decided to lean on. I doubt it, but there was definitely been some top seats available, and he's not been considered for them because he's been wedded to Alpine or wedded to Aston Martin, and it's just he's just rolling the dice far too often. Sometimes you just got to let your talent do the talking. You just got to be an F1, keep your options open, and then things will happen because you're a great driver. And that hasn't happened in the last 10 years for Fernando Alonso, because he's been too much. I need to take a risk and go for the win. I need to get that championship. No, just race. Just go out there, just race, show who you are, and then when the big seats become available, you will be top of the list. But no one wants him because he's too much of a risk, and you don't know where his performance ceiling is anymore. Because Ocon was very close to him, and nobody's talked about Ocon as this amazing, future world champion or anything like that. He's good. He's decent. He's a perfectly solid F1 driver, but Ocon beat Alonso quite frequently. So, and now we're at the point where Stroll is beating him quite frequently. That there's got to be a point where biology takes over, and I think that time might have finally come. I'll be eating my words when he gets a podium in Montreal and then wins a race later in the year, I'm sure. But yeah, I think maybe that time might have finally come for Fernando.
Yeah, it's I mean, I love Fernando. As I've always loved Fernando. And I still think that Fernando will go down as one of the best drivers in Formula One. It's just that he will also probably go down as a driver with the worst decision-making ability when it comes to choosing what team he's at. Because he has not really put a I mean, since leaving Renault the first, or even leaving McLaren, go back to Renault, that Renault wasn't great. They go to Ferrari. Ferrari were not that quick during his. Um, so before we wrap up, I think we have a quick mention of the lap one incident between Jack Doohan and Liam Lawson. Um, it's kind of just one of those turn one, lap one kind of incidents, isn't it? It was a bit of a silly move, you could argue, from Lawson. He's not had the best luck when it comes to incidents, as we kind of mentioned earlier with his incident with Fernando. But things aren't looking great for Liam at RB, and ultimately both drivers retired at the end of the race.
Yeah, it's not looking good at all. He's showing flashes of pace, which he wasn't showing in his two races in the Red Bull, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he was penalised. Oh, it was after the race they're investigating it, wasn't it? The Lawson Doohan crash, I believe.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to lay blame, you blame it with Lawson. If that wasn't lap one, then I think Lawson's getting a penalty for that, in my opinion. But I'm happy to be criticised on that. I just think it just looks like he's getting a bit desperate. He's seeing Tsunoda starting to get to grips with that car, and he's seeing Lawson growing into Formula. Not Lawson, he's Lawson. He's seeing Hadjar grow into Formula One now, and it's just he looks like he might be the next cab off the rank. Where you got Lindblad, who seems to be the next big thing coming through the Red Bull program. And I can just see him being the one that gets, when the music stops, he's the one that's left with that seat again. And I feel sorry for him, but it's yeah, it's not looking great. He needs to get to grips with it and needs to improve for the. I think he just needs to calm down because I think he's just trying too hard at the moment now. He's clearly got talent. He's clearly a fast F1 driver. He's clearly every bit as good as Yuki Tsunoda, but just not able to make that step up because Yuki probably with the more experience was able to make that step. So it's another occasion of Red Bull just throwing people in. They did it with Gasly, they did it with Albon, they did it, with various drivers over the years, and it's just been the wrong decision. It's just their whole throw them in. If they swim, they're amazing. If not, then they were never worth anything in the first place. And it's why I don't respect the Red Bull Driver Academy as much as a lot of other people do because they just keep throwing stuff at a wall and just seeing what sticks, and that's not how to nurture young talent. That's borderline abuse. So I know like they would be nowhere without them, but I just think you're ending people's careers that could have long F1 careers here, and then they just end up in, look at poor Brendan Hartley, just and Alex Albon just been like hired and fired so many times. It's just it's just not the way to go about things. It's a very outdated concept. So who would want to be part of the driver academy nowadays, realistically?
Mm. I was just having a quick look on the FIA documents page. I have not seen anything about that accident even being noted. So maybe it has just been brushed under the carpet as a racing incident. The only thing that's come out recently is no further action on Lewis Hamilton or Sainz for their end of race little tassel.
What a
Sainz is
shocker.
still his Sainz is still waiting for his yellow flag um uh decision. But that's the only thing we've got left. So that is all for the Miami Grand Prix. The last thing to do is driver of the day. The Grid Talks driver of the day today was officially Oscar Piastri. Tom, did you agree with that?
Just to be awkward, I'm going to pick someone different because it's very easy to go with the winner. I was considering Lando Norris because I thought that, as I said earlier, he did nothing wrong in that opening incident and was the fastest driver on track. But I'm going to go with Alex Albon. I'm going to show Williams some love. I think he did a great job. He gained positions. Um, he wasn't particularly favoured by the safety car, virtual safety car. I don't think he was there on pace. He was there on merit. He's had a solid weekend. And I think that he's deserved of driver of the day for me because that's a solid result for Williams.
Well, funny enough, Tom, it was only two votes for Alex Albon on the poll for driver of the day. One was you, and the other was me. I also put Alex Albon.
There we go.
I think he had an absolutely solid race today, and yeah, well, Piastri did very well to come to sort of fight through and win the race. Albon, I think, did an absolutely solid job, and he was my driver of the day today.
Well, we're the ones that are willing to podcast at this crazy hour, both for you and for me. So our authority rules on that. Sorry, everyone, you're wrong.
Yeah, we'll be updating the Grid Talk socials and changing it to the correct one. So that is all from us today. Tom, of course, you are from Monkey Seat primarily, even though you do join us even at ridiculous times here on Grid Talk. Anything that you'd like to plug?
Well, yeah, we occasionally record podcasts at Monkey Seat. We haven't been able to because of life and things the last few weeks. So hopefully we're going to be recording one for talking about this race on Tuesday. It's just myself and Carl, two mates, having a laugh, talking about Formula One. Sometimes we talk about other stuff, but it's normally Formula One. It's normally wrong opinions or warped opinions, but we have fun what we're doing anyway. So by all means, come and give us a listen where you can normally find podcasts.
Thank you. And for us here on Grid Talk, make sure to follow all our socials at Grid Talk UK. That's whether you're using Threads, Instagram, even on YouTube. If you go youtube.com slash Grid Talk UK, you'll find our podcast. And we've kind of alluded to it a few times, but on our socials right now, we have a Grid Talk host predictions challenge that we do before every single Grand Prix weekend. And I'm doing okay. Tom is doing all right. But yeah, so if you want to see what our predictions were before the Miami Grand Prix, go over to our socials. We'll soon be publishing as well the results and how many points we scored. Just to say that there have been a couple of people who did get well, there was one person who got the podium absolutely spot on. So go over to our socials and check that out. Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes like this are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for the F1 Grid Talk podcast. Big thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. So you can check out our Patreon to support the show, as well as getting our podcasts, Patreon exclusive podcasts, and other exclusive content. So please make sure to check that out. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, all of the people in our live chat, and also the people who will listen to this later. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast. Goodbye.